M3GAN 2.0 is the sequel to M3GAN, this one taking on more of a sci-fi action comedy tone rather than the sci-fi horror that we got with the first M3GAN. This takes place a few years after the events of M3GAN. In this case, Gemma and Katie are still trying to live out their life. Gemma is now essentially basically kind of telling the world about the dangers of AI and the importance that the parents need to have in being present with their kids, not letting technology raise their kids. Because we saw what happened last time that went down, and a lot of people did die, and even more people almost died. However, it turns out the military came across the studies that Gemma used to create M3GAN. They've now put it into their own research to create a humanoid military machine known as Amelia. Unfortunately though, Amelia has developed a mind of her own. She becomes very sentient, she betrays the military, and now she's planning an AI takeover. Now they need to find a way to stop Amelia, and the only way that might be is to rebuild M3GAN and reprogram her into a military combat bot herself and send her to take out Amelia. The first M3GAN was one of those movies that was a lot better than it had any business being. You know, you look at it and you kind of think it's gonna be a dumb, generic horror movie. But no, it was surprisingly entertaining. It had some thrilling moments going for itself. It was kind of silly and a little ridiculous, but it was fun. And it had the message in there like, hey, parents, don't let technology raise your kids for you. Yeah, people liked it, it made money, so now inevitably we have a sequel. And what I will say, what intrigued me a little bit with the premise and the trailer that I saw for M3GAN 2.0 is it kind of looked like this M3GAN franchise was going for a little bit of a Terminator feel for it. Like whereas the first Terminator was sci-fi horror, the sequel was more sci-fi action. M3GAN felt like it was going for the same feel because of what M3GAN 2.0 was marketing itself to be. And that is something I should let you know right now. If you really loved the horror element of the first M3GAN, you're not going to get that here. M3GAN 2.0 is a sci-fi action comedy. Not really a lot of intense, thrilling, scary moments in this one. In fact, there aren't really any. Because this movie essentially tries to play more into what really made the first M3GAN so enjoyable and liked by people. And that is the character of M3GAN, the funny one-liners that she did drop in kind of a very dark, malicious way in the first movie. And naturally, she became such a beloved character from the first M3GAN that in this one they decided, like, let's take her and just make her the hero of the story. And I will say, I was interested in that idea. I respect the direction that they chose to go in, because if you decided to make a horror movie once again with M3GAN, it was just going to feel redundant, it was going to feel stale. And I will say, I do like the dynamic between the characters, namely Gemma, Katie, and M3GAN. They had quite the adventure together in the last movie, and now it's reached a point where it's like, there's something really dangerous out there, there's a killer robot that's going around, it's going to create an AI takeover, and the only way we can stop it is with something AI of ourselves. But naturally, because of what happened with M3GAN in the last movie, there's not a lot of trust there, it needs to be rebuilt, leads to a lot of very sarcastic, funny banter between M3GAN and between Katie, and, well, not really Katie, more so Gemma, but also a little bit of Katie. But I was actually able to roll with the idea of M3GAN being a hero in this one, to a point anyway, because ultimately her program was always to protect Katie, which is what she did in the first movie. She just went about it the wrong way. In this case, it's like there's this robot out there known as Amelia that's going to harm the human race, which includes Katie, so M3GAN's like, in order to protect Katie, I have to protect humanity. That was an idea that I was able to get behind. What I had a little trouble getting behind, and granted, I know the movie doesn't want you to take it too seriously, but it's the fact that it felt like Gemma and M3GAN kind of squashed their beef rather quickly. It's like they argue for a little bit about what went down when Gemma's like, you tried to cut out my tongue, and M3GAN was like, I was mad. It's like, okay, yeah, you were just mad. I guess we'll kind of just make it up as we go along. I mean, it's not like they break bread that quickly or anything like that, but I did find it a little bit interesting that, you know, Gemma was so willing to allow M3GAN to come back necessarily. Now, I get it. Desperate times call for very desperate measures, but I did find it a little strange that they were able to tweak M3GAN in such a way, or M3GAN was able to just find this redemption along the way for herself, that she was no longer going to be a threat. I mean, for the sake of having M3GAN in the story, and for the sake of not having long exposition, I get why they had to shorten it, but it did feel a little, you know, forced and a little bit of a cop-out. Also, I think the concept of Amelia as this killer android is very interesting. I mean, she has a little bit of a T-1000 vibe, representing Terminator again, to herself, in the sense that, you know, she's very stoic, not very emotional, she will kill everybody. Granted, she's nowhere near as cool or as menacing as the T-1000, but she works for this movie. And yeah, the movie once again represents the dangers of technology. You know, sometimes you want to make something very, you know, extravagant, something that might be of great use to you and help your cause to a certain degree, but sometimes you let your imagination run a little too wild and it bites you in the ass. Like the movie understands like human greed and what the mind is capable of developing with technology. They don't stop and consider the dangers of what they might be creating. I will say this much, this movie undeniably also takes a while to get going, because for a while it's like they have to bring M3GAN kind of back online, or at least try to put her back into her body and everything. For a while she's like that little Teletubby looking thing. But you get why, like they don't want to give her a body yet, they need to see if they can trust her and all that shit, but undeniably, it takes a while for the movie to really get going. I mean, you see Amelia very sparingly. It's not like she's out causing a whole lot of havoc or damage. And the rest of the time, it's just the banter between Gemma and M3GAN for a while, which is entertaining in the beginning, but it eventually reaches a point where you're like, okay, can we put her in her body now and see her kick some ass? I mean, that's what you come to the movie for, so when it's not happening, you're sitting there very antsy, if you're me anyway. And undeniably, this movie does, once again, play into the memes and the things that made the previous M3GAN iconic, or at least memorable. And in this movie, it does feel like they're reaching for old jokes, they're trying to reuse the same comedy that might have worked in the previous movie. In here, it undeniably gets a little bit stale. There weren't a lot of moments where I was maybe laughing as much as I wanted to, or at least as much as the movie was intending for me to. I will say, even the action in this movie itself, it's not a very heavy action movie, at least not as much as I thought it would be. I mean, really, the throwing down between M3GAN and Amelia, it really doesn't go down until the very end of the movie itself. I mean, granted, when it happens, the stakes are high, you find out who's on your side, who's not on the hero's side and everything, and, you know, it is entertaining seeing the two of them throw down with each other. And you do get a little bit more history into Gemma's company, what's been going on with them, what is really going to lead to potentially worldwide consequences. But undeniably, it did feel like we were left a little bit short of the action. I mean, for a while, it just looks like M3GAN being geared up and programmed to train, how they, you know, upgrade her body, what they program into her to know. Me personally, I could have done without the montage, and I would have preferred to see more of throwing down between Amelia and M3GAN. I will say this much right now, there were people in the audience having a fun-ass time with this movie, so it's really all according to how much the first M3GAN did it for you. If you really dug the shit out of the first M3GAN, if you really loved that movie, if that was a movie that you had a great time with, you will probably go into this movie and appreciate M3GAN 2.0 as a sequel. You'll certainly have a lot of fun with it. If for you, the first M3GAN was more of a delightful surprise and a movie that was just better than it had any business being, you'll go into this movie and as you're watching it, there are moments of enjoyment for sure, but it's not going to feel like a sequel that was necessary. So all in all, M3GAN 2.0, it has its moments. The banter and the chemistry between Gemma, Katie, M3GAN, that's all really nice. It's cool to see Gemma still learning how to be an adoptive mother to Katie. She's still trying to figure that out a little bit here and there. So it creates some solid moments of tension and difficulties between the two of them. Some family stuff in there that's nice. It takes a little while for the movie to get going. It takes a little while for the robot action to go down, and even when it does at the end, it's fun, but it's not the most payoff you've ever experienced. Has plenty of humor in here, some of which is inevitably funny, some of which gets a little bit stale at one point or another. I appreciate that this movie decided to be a different genre, not just a complete retelling of the first M3GAN. I do think this movie should have been rated R though, because there are moments where there are certain kill shots or there's certain action sequences where some moments could have been awesome, really in your face with gore and action and violence. And granted, I know it's PG-13, so they gotta scale it back a little bit, but that's part of the problem. If this was an R-rated movie, I undeniably would have had more fun with it. Definitely a couple of references to other sci-fi, AI certain movies in there. There's one moment in particular, my friend and I looked at each other and simultaneously, we called what the movie was referencing. Undeniably a moment I appreciate. Some will call it ripping off, I'll call it, you know, throwing homage or respect, or whatever it is. And in the end, if you're gonna go see M3GAN 2.0, understand exactly what it is and understand how much you liked the first M3GAN. I'm gonna give M3GAN 2.0 a 5 out of 10 because I do think there's around half a movie in here that's worth watching.
How much you want?
Half.
So that's all I gotta say, guys. Thank you so much for watching my video, and as always, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.